Rolling Willits, All Men's Stories. Heading towards the center of the universe. Their chopsticks pointed that way.
I have to admit that I need to dispel a public misconception. And that misconception is that all Chinese kids start with chopsticks as their eating utensil. Sorry, not true. You start with a spoon. And the reason for this is because chopsticks require a specific manual dexterity coordination that kids don't have when you're 2 or 3 or maybe 4. And it's easier just to get the fork or the spoon in your fist and go jam, pick it up, shove it in your mouth. And so you have your kids, when you're babies, being fed with a spoon. Eventually, though, you get into the point where you're expected to learn how to use chopsticks in some households. Mine was one of them. I have relatives who prefer to use forks and knives anyway. And most of the time, I have to admit, when I cook at home, I stick with the fork and the knife. I was born here in America, and there are a lot of things that are easier to eat, like steak, that has not been chopped up. You cannot cut things with a set of chopsticks. If you sliced it up beforehand and throw it in that way, that's what you could possibly use a chopstick with. And chopsticks have a limited utility. I'll just say that right now. And that's why a lot of Asian dishes are bite-sized foods, because they're designed to be eaten with chopsticks. Mashed potatoes, not so much. Anyway, if you wanted to know the secret of how I learned how to work with chopsticks, the answer is crayons. Roland's now giving me a look. Crayons, as you understand, are a lot bigger and thicker than chopsticks. And Mom would say, okay, take these 2 crayons, hold them like this, use them like a pair of pincers, and pick up that pencil. I said, okay. And I kind of worked it a little bit, and because crayons are made of wax and they're kind of sticky, they're a lot tackier than ivory, which is very slippery. And that's another difference between chopsticks of different varieties, is the kind of surface that they have. If you go to a place down in Japantown and look at their chopsticks that they have for sale, you'll notice that a lot of Japanese chopsticks have a little knurled thing on the end, and that is for traction gripping. The hard chopsticks to work with are the ones that are smooth ivory, and when they get greasy, you are in big trouble if you have to pick up one of the signature dishes in a lot of restaurants, which is asparagus or broccoli that has been put in olive oil. Because those are hard to pick up. That's like level 5 difficulty. Now, getting back to the crayons. After I worked with the crayons for a good deal, and I said, no problem, grab, pick stuff up. She said, okay, now pick up something smaller. And she graduated me to smaller and smaller things. And finally she said, okay, now I'm going to take the chopsticks, replace them, or the crayons, replace them with pencils. These were not the usual number 2 pencils. These are the really thick, double-sized, double-width pencils designed for grade schoolers. Okay. I had the pencils and I picked the same stuff up because once you learn the skill, it gets easier. It says now reverse them and use the ends with the points. And I picked stuff up with the pencils. It was great. Next trick, pair of chopsticks. And the light bulb went off in my head. That's what you're doing? I said, yep, that's what I'm doing. So she made this stuff that was, by the way, that's also one of the reasons that the proper way that I was taught to make rice is sticky rice. None of this minute rice, none of this individual flyaway rice thing, no. Sticky rice is the way to go because you can take your chopsticks, put them together, don't bother with the pincer bit, scoop it underneath and use it as a spoon. So anyone who says you have to eat rice a single grain at a time, or itty bitty bits at a time, like you ask why do you pick up rice with chopsticks? You don't. Use it as a spoon. That's the basic skill at the start. Before the chopsticks, it's a spoon. And you can take your chopsticks and stab things with them if you really want to, and use this as a spear thing that looks kind of silly and falls off the end of the chopsticks. But hey, think about how often you've eaten it with fondue forks or marshmallows over a campfire. And I've done my share of that as well. It's not about being required to use chopsticks in a specific manner, but just simply that you do not have to be afraid of them, and that you just have to know the couple of different ways to hold the chopsticks, and just remember using them as a pair of pincers. Just pick stuff up that way or just scoop it underneath. And I have taught multiple people how to use chopsticks in my lifetime, because everyone goes, "Oh look, you're Chinese, you must know chopsticks." I was like, yeah, I don't know how, will you teach me? And suddenly I have a field lesson on my hands. And I have to say the last one I did was almost exactly a year ago, when a friend of mine said, "I don't know how to use chopsticks, people have tried to teach me before, but I'm going to learn, darn it." I said, "Okay, you might get a little hungry, but don't worry about it. I got you covered. I've taught people to do this before." And I taught him a technique that worked in less than 10 minutes, and he was eating up until the point his hands were cramping. And I said, "That's enough of this lesson," and started eating with his hands again. But from that point on, he had it down. So it's sort of the lessons of life are kind of like sticky rice. They stick.
Old men stories headed home. And we got our chopsticks with us.